Hey folks, and welcome back to the channel. Now it's that time again. We've been given a new Project Zomboid development update from the team at the Indie Stone. So as always, I'll be covering the update to make it more digestible for you folks at home. There's some pretty good stuff in this update, which was dropped on March 30th of 2023. So if you get something useful from this video or just enjoy watching it, do consider dropping the video a like and subscribing to the channel for all things Project Zomboid and zombie survival. So at the start of this blog post, the developers give us a sort of recap of what they are referring to as the 4 fundamental pillars of Build 42. Now for those that don't remember, I'll cover those now. Firstly, the massively expanded and in-depth crafting system, complete with workbenches, reworked recipe systems, and more. As mentioned in the last dev blog, the code systems this is all being based on have been merged with the internal testing build, and as such, much of the last week or two has been centered around fixing the long-standing recipes and functions that the new stuff has broken. The devs go on to state that they're now pretty much at the point where things are operational again, but that there's not much new to report in this department, as most of the progress made has been on bug fixing rather than new implementations. Next was moving player inventories and actions associated with players to server side rather than client side. The devs report in this post that the lengthy first stage of that process is now complete, that being focused on transferring player inventories to the server. This has been merged with the internal testing build, so the team's multiplayer coders can now delve deep into stage 2. This will see any and all operations using player inventories such as building, recipes, or foraging also move into server control. The next of the 4 pillars focuses on performance improvements. And once again, the team are at the point of bug fixing and further optimization phases with the chunked rendering and variable height systems that we've seen in previous blogs. Not much to report on this front just yet. Now, that brings us lastly to animals and animal husbandry. This is going to be a pretty large part of Build 42 to say the least, and we were provided with some new footage for this dev blog, which shows off some of the new audio effects that have been attributed to the animals we've seen so far, and one that we haven't. I'll let that clip play now for you guys so that you can have a listen for yourselves. Now, to my knowledge, this is the first we've seen of any wild game being added to Project Zomboid, and at least from first impressions, and they are limited, I'll give you that, it looks like they're further along with this than we might have first thought. Sure, we've heard they were intended for the game, and we've seen some stuff in the past that talked about animal migration, reference wild game, and so on, but not any actual footage of these sorts of animals. I'm interested to see if there are any other wild animals we might might not have seen just yet, but even if not, the implementation of deer alone would do wonders for Project Zomboid in the realms of hunting for food. Super cool little preview, excited to see what's coming in this department in due time. Now, following on from the 4 key implementations of Build 42, the developers give us a bit of an update on several other smaller features that are planned as part of this build, telling us that the new fishing system is almost wrapped up in its entirety to get things started. If you haven't seen any of that just yet, we were given some footage of the new system in action in a few blog posts in the past, which was focused around making players more involved with the system, amongst other things. Work continues on the farming revamp and is now having crop assets built for it. The developers don't say when we're likely to see these new assets just yet, but I'd hazard a guess here that we'll likely see some progress on that within the next few blog posts. Lastly, the map expansion is keeping pace according to the developers and will also likely be part of Build 42 as well. Next, the developers move on to discussing the new adaptive music system. For those unfamiliar, the original soundtrack for Project Zomboid was created by Zach Beaver, and what Formosa have been up to more recently is taking the original arrangements and stems that Zach made to create variations of the soundtrack that have different variations of intensity. This allows the music to be suited to different situations within the game, and as the name suggests, adapt to circumstances as they evolve. We've already experienced the first stages of this in Build 41 with action music, which is specifically when players are in combat, but we were given another section of footage in this blog post, which shows off some of the adaptive exploration soundtrack as well. Basically, the soundtrack to just walking around and investigating the world of post-apocalyptic Kentucky. I'm going to let this segment play without voiceover, but keep an eye out for changes in the music associated to things like the opening of doors, vaulting a fence, or entering a building. Following on from the video, the developers do stress that they're only working with a very basic set of events at the moment, like the previously mentioned doors opening, stepping into new buildings, and vaulting. However, they'll be adding lots of different game events that will have big and small impacts on the intensity of the music going forward. This could be anything from the discovery of a unique or special building, finding useful loot, noticing a survivor zombie, and the list goes on. The biggest thing to know, really, is that this will be improved and fine-tuned over the coming weeks and months significantly. The version we saw in this video went into testing only yesterday, so it's fair to say that it's a pretty new development. I know some people might be thinking something along the lines of, music? So what? I don't really care about music. Well, whilst it might not come across as a major feature, the way we emotionally react to sounds and music is undeniable. What you have to think of here is how much those first experiences in Project Zomboid, like finding your first generator or seeing your first crops grow to harvest, would be enhanced by a music system like this. Those impactful moments create emotional reactions, and with the music system, those moments will be reinforced and will stick with us for longer. That's just my 2 cents, of course. Anyway, moving on, the developers then mentioned that the recording sessions for character noises, such as things like physical exertion, have been ongoing this week. These will be placed over various actions that the character will complete, making for a more realistic soundscape. The team have also used the opportunity to record many experimental dialogue lines that could potentially be played, albeit very muffled, over the TV and radio shows in a similar way to The Sims. Automated announcements are also mentioned, which could still be playing in popular venues like malls since the zombie outbreak occurred. The developers say that they'll likely have more to show off on this topic in the next blog, so something to look forward to there. Next, we're on to outdoor sleeping, and for those of you that can remember, as far back as a few weeks ago, we were shown various items created by Blair that would lend themselves to the world of rural survival. We saw more of that in the last dev blog as well, with all sorts of items like new tents, cooking tripods for campfires, sleeping bags, and much more. In this development blog, the devs show us this image and explain that sleeping bags and tents will both have the ability to be attached to appropriate backpacks when packed up. Now, I'm actually pretty excited for this because it might bring a bit more reason to go for more than just the backpack that has the most storage space. Right now, most of us look for the military backpack because it holds most weight, but would you still go for it if you couldn't attach a sleeping bag to it, or perhaps some other useful survival materials? Just throwing something out there and something to think about anyway. Tents in Build 42 will now be considered both a storage container and a place to sleep, giving more options to Nomad players. But the devs do mention that tents aren't good beds, and neither is a sleeping bag when used by itself. We'll be able to place either a sleeping bag or a mattress into a tent to make it a better place to sleep, as well as being able to use a pillow for a modest increase to sleep quality as well. The devs make note here that this will also apply to sleeping in a car seat, and when sleeping in a tent, will be sheltered from the rain as well. The final section of this dev blog from the developers takes a look at something I know a lot of us are eagerly awaiting, and that's the underground areas of the map. Now, for those unfamiliar, Build 42 is bringing in a system that will allow for map expansion both above and below ground by increasing the height limit set within the game. The artists and mappers at the Indie Stone are now working on new visuals that will better suit locations beneath the ground. They've given this example as part of the blog post, aiming to show off a bit of the decorative aspects that can be expected when we finally get to exploring underneath the Nox exclusion zone. And that's it from this Thursdoid, and as such, that's it from me in this video, but as always, there will be a link to the original blog post in the description, and if there's anything in particular that you're excited for, or you want to share your thoughts on this update, please do feel free to do so in the comments. And on another note, before I go, for those that have watched my previous video about the development of several mods aimed at overhauling Project Zomboid into a more MMORPG-esque experience, we're actually going to be testing an early version of our specially developed quest system by Soulfilter on the Patreon server this month as part of one of our Stalker-themed wipes. So, if you want to give that a try, there's a link in the description to my Patreon where you can get access to both of our servers, and as always, a very special thank you to all my existing patrons for their ongoing support towards my channel, my content, the mod development underway, and our servers. Thanks folks, and I will see you all in the next one.